Another fine day at Camp Dynasty. I am Counselor Austin, joined by Counselor Collin, and we are talking about week 9 of college football and the first week where Camp Dynasty had boots on the ground and out in the wild scouting for this week's episode.
Yeah, this is the game that we were looking forward to for a while. You know, we're both Wisconsin residents, and Mr. 101 came to town. So we had to go and see him in person, go see 18 in person. We ended up at Camp Randall Stadium in Madison. And I'd say I had a blast. That was a fun game, and I mean, we'll talk about it later. But the players in that game some of them lived up to the expectations that we set for them.
Some of them did, and we'll be talking about them on this episode. A unique perspective being in the building, getting to see them in person. I mean, it was crazy. It was crazy. We'll talk about Mr. 101 eventually. But before we get there, Colin, you won the coin toss this week, and you did not select Mr. 101. So who are we talking about?
We're talking about another player that we saw in this game, and we were pleasantly surprised by in this game. And that is TreVeyon Henderson. He's back. We haven't seen him in quite a while. The last game that he played in was against Notre Dame in week 4. So it's been a long time since we've gotten to see this guy play. And, you know, there's some questions surrounding him. But this week against the Badgers, he was, making him look silly. Maybe he was putting him in the ground. He's getting the Pet Cemetery badge.
Oh, it's horror movie week.
Because it is Halloween, the day that this podcast will be released. So, we're giving TreVeyon Henderson the Pet Cemetery badge because he was killing Badgers this week.
Hey, best time of the year for more reasons than one. Not only are we entrenched in the college football season, but we are also celebrating Halloween this week. And man, you're not kidding. This was a dominant and scary performance for TreVeyon Henderson this week. The last time we saw him, like you said, was week 4 against Notre Dame, and he got a badge on this program for his performance in that game. And so back-to-back weeks that he has played, he has gotten a badge at Camp Dynasty. And so there's been questions. When we did the midseason rankings, you know, there were questions about TreVeyon Henderson. He was near the bottom of my top 12. He was just outside of your top 12 at the midseason mark. We were still kind of wondering, what is this player at this point in time? And big reason for that was obviously the health concerns this year, which seem potentially independent from the ones from last year, though I don't know if we know that for sure. But regardless, he gets on the field this week and looked absolutely phenomenal. I mean, receiving as well, 4 catches on 5 targets for 45 yards in this one as well. Like, he just looked like that player that we remember from way back when, catching the ball, running the ball, looking explosive, looking like a potential game-changing running back. And I hope that this is what we get to see for the rest of this season, because if it is, it's going to feel really good to have this player back amongst the top names in this class.
Yeah, the biggest thing that I noticed, and I'm sure you noticed, was the explosion. he just popped out of every single cut, and it was like the jukes. He would just wiggle, and as soon as the defender commits one way, he is going the other way, and it was not taking him long to get to full speed. So en route to 162 yards on the ground, and like you said, 45 yards through the air, was a hell of a game for Travion Henderson. And hopefully this isn't the last time that he's on the program, because if Cal McCord is going to look like how he looked on Saturday, they're going to be needing to hand it off to 32 a little more often. And if he's going to look like this and how he played against Notre Dame, I mean, obviously they feel pretty comfortable. He's had about a month off since the Notre Dame game, so they feel pretty comfortable giving him 28 touches, and he's turning it into really good production. 11 yards per catch and 6.8 yards per carry. Not too bad for Travion Henderson. So we will keep talking about it. We'll keep beating the drum. The running backs in this season have been less than desirable, let's say. And there is room to rise and room to fall for all of these players. And if Travion can be this guy that he was on Saturday, then, I mean, there will be a conversation to be had at the end of the year.
Yeah, well, I mean, and the big thing here, we kind of buried the lead almost a little bit. The number that you just said that really popped at me, 24 carries, 28 total touches. I mean, that was a story through the early weeks of the season in the games in which he was playing. He was splitting time. He wasn't on the field all the time. He was getting around 12 carries for the most part in the games that he was playing, 12, 13, 14 carries. Then we see this week, they really, put the workload on his shoulders, 24 carries, 162 yards. I mean, he looked like the dominant player that we remember from 2021. And honestly, you see it all on the dagger touchdown run, and that late in the fourth quarter when it's just you see the burst where he gets himself to the second level and then makes plays in open space with defenders around him to get into the end zone, finish the run. It was vintage. And like you just said, there will be certainly a conversation to be had when we dive into the film, the 2023 film for all of these running backs. Travion is still there's still that player there. There is still RB1 potential with this player, and so many more weeks like this, and we'll be right there.
Yeah, he forced 6 missed tackles in this game, and that is the most that he's had since 2021 in week 3. So you're seeing that player that we were hoping to see this season, and he popped in, put on a little show for us while we were in Camp Randall watching him live.
He sure did. And you want to know who else put on a show at Camp Randall? How about Mr. 101, Marvin Harrison Jr., as advertised. I mean, this is the thing, man. When you watch this kind of a player play, like you watch him every single week, and it's like, man, he's so good, 100-yard receiving after 100-yard receiving. Then you watch how different he moves on a football field when you're that close and you see that. It's really something else, man. I mean, I was pretty much watching him on every single play, just like what is Marvin doing here? Constant separation. I mean, there were a few targets in the first quarter. He had 10 total targets in this game, 6 catches, and most of those missed targets came in the first quarter. where Kyle McCord was just not on the same page with him. Like they were not, the ball was not going to where Marvin was. So whether that was miscommunications or inaccuracy, I don't know, but they eventually figured that connection out. And I mean, the plays where he wasn't getting targeted, he was wide open constantly. I mean, just constantly. So 6 catches, 123 yards, and 2 touchdowns in this game. Could have been an even bigger game if McCord just like eagle-eyed on him the whole time. But I'm still giving him here the Terrifier badge, because not only was he terrifying the Badgers defense, but he was making a show out of it, just like Art the Clown might in the Terrifier series.
I haven't seen Terrifier.
If you're squeamish, don't do it.
No,
I watched the first one and it messed me up a little bit.
Yeah, Marvin messed up the Badgers a little bit. It was I too was like, well, if we're here, when in Rome, you might as well. Yeah. And so I was sitting checking out what is this guy doing? What is he? And every single time that he was one-on-one on the outside, I'd like give you a little elbow bump. I'd be like, oh, here we go. Let's see what's gonna happen. And more often than not, if he got a target on that, it was a win. And that's basically how both of his touchdowns came, was him just lined up one-on-one press man with no safety help. And it's just like, you're just hanging this guy out to dry. Like, what do you expect is going to happen? And like you said, this could have been a bigger game. He had 123 yards on 6 catches. He very well could have had 200 plus in this game if, number one, McCord was accurate early in this game, and number two, if he was just a better processor, or if he just had Marvin as a first read on some of these plays, because he was just getting open almost instantly on a lot of these plays. And then if not right away, the longer developing plays, he was getting open late. And it's like, man, I wish he just threw it to 18 every single play, because he could be, putting together historic numbers if McCord was actually looking for him and throwing to him as often as he's actually open on the field.
Well, and that's the crazy thing. I think this season it's almost becoming lost because of who this player is, where week after week we see these huge receiving totals, and it's kind of like a yawn. Marvin does it again. Like, this is the 4th consecutive week that he's had over 100 yards receiving, and he's had over 100 yards receiving in 6 of the last 7 weeks. So we're reaching a point here where he's just about nearly to 900 yards receiving already this year. Several games to be played here. I mean, like, he is having a special season, and it should not be lost that the production side of this is like as advertised with this player. Like, I think, we say like, oh, he could add 200 this week. Like, that's every week, like,
it's
if
true.
CJ Stroud is still the quarterback of this team, the numbers that Marvin would have right now I can't even fathom. It would be Devontae Smith levels of production this year. And people are already talking about, does he deserve the Heisman? Because it's pretty clear that this is the best player in college football. Like, pound for pound, all things considered, the effect that he has on the game every single week is just enormous for a team that doesn't have a star quarterback right now. I mean, McCord, you see it in this game, multiple turnovers, inaccuracies. It doesn't matter. You look to 18, he'll make the play for you. And I don't have to look any further than the 2nd touchdown in this game, where McCord goes up with it, corner of the end zone, and while the ball's in the air, you see Marvin Harrison one-on-one with the corner, and you're just like, oh, this is a touchdown.
Yep.
Like you can feel that confident. If he has that one-on-one matchup, you can feel that confident that he's coming down with it. And he made another unbelievable highlight reel touchdown catch, contested catch. I mean, he is the closer we get to the end of this season, the more excited I'm getting to get to the draft cycle and get to, where is this player going to be?
Yep.
What is it going to look like? Because this is such an exciting wide receiver prospect, and one that, I hope that I will have the opportunity to draft someday.
Yeah, seriously. It's going to be hard because you need the number one pick to get him. Unless you're in a super flex league, then you have a little bit of wiggle room. But, I mean, the play that you're talking about, the touchdown, if McCord just throws a good ball, it's like an easy catch for a touchdown. If McCord leads him to the back pylon, it's just like a toe tap on the back of the end zone touchdown. Instead, he makes Marvin go up for this 50-50 ball, which, hey, I'm not complaining. And then Marvin, does what Marvin does. So, I mean, it was a pleasure to get to watch these two players in person. I'll just say that. It was a lot of fun to get to Camp Randall. I haven't been there in a long time. I mean, since, it's been... Jared Abbrederis was on the team. So that's can tell you how long it's been since I've been in Camp Randall.
Oh yeah, man.
So enjoyed that.
Yeah, it was great. And while we were enjoying the night lights at Camp Randall, Kansas was enjoying a sweet victory from early in the day, and no small part due to our next player.
That's right. Our next player is Devin Neal, who has been on the program before, making a return after Kansas' huge win over Oklahoma. They tore down the goalpost, threw him in the lake. I mean, well-deserved. And it had a lot to do with Devin Neal ending this game and Devin Neal being hard to tackle in general. And he is getting the Mist badge. When's the last time you saw the Mist?
I haven't ever seen the Mist, actually.
Well, I won't spoil the ending because it's the best part. But that's the reason I chose this badge, this movie for this badge, because of it's known for the ending. And Devin Neal had the game sealing run in this game to end the game with 55 seconds left. On top of a solid game, he got the most work that he's had all season with 24 carries, got a $105 and a touchdown. And the touchdown was the game sealing touchdown. So Devin Neal, he's an interesting player because there's a lot to like about him. He's quick. He makes people miss. I mean, he has pretty good vision, and he's a good receiver. Through this season, he has just about 200 receiving yards. He had 6 targets in this game. So just an interesting, fun player that could be better than a lot of people think.
Yeah, I mean, when we talked about him the first time, whenever that was, I mean, I kind of said, this is a player that I wasn't aware of coming into the year. Kind of got some Kendre Miller vibes from him a little bit, a Big 12 running back, shifty, quick. And, man, he's been having just a really nice, solid year. And this game, like you said, and I want to take a moment to appreciate the layers of that badge that you just handed out, because I was like, Mist, like he's you can't get your hands on him. But then we get the ending twist in there. I mean, really complex and great stuff right there.
So that's what we're here for.
Yeah. But yeah, Devin Neal. I mean, honestly, I thought early in the game, from catching myself back up on it, I thought a little bit of a slower start, and they get some other guys mixed in here. In this offense, there's a lot of motion. There's a lot of, different formations, and you'll have Devin Neal taking direct snaps and all of these different things. There's a lot going on here. And one thing that you notice with Devin Neal is it feels like he's always where he needs to be. He's always picking up blocks. He's always he's just from what I can tell, I hate when people do this, but I'm going to do it anyway. From what I can see from watching the game, seems like a high IQ sort of a player that kind of understands the game and understands where he needs to be, what his assignments are. And that reflects in his vision as well. I think you see pretty good vision out of Devin Neal as well. And then the missed tackles, like you said, 35 missed tackles forced on the year thus far, 4 in this game. And receiving also has been a big part of his game. Not as much over the last few weeks here compared to the first few games of this season, but still 19 catches for 196 yards this year, already a career best in yardage receiving for him this year. So he's a fun player, and I'm excited to find out, kind of where this goes. He's a third-year player. If he decides to throw his name into this draft, where will he end up amongst these running backs? That'll be a fun one.
Yeah, and he's putting together career high for yards per attempt, and then yards after contact per attempt is up a full yard, which is impressive. He has almost matched his total for last year for yards after contact, with 439 of his 764. So you can tell that he is becoming a more complete back as a player, instead of being so reliant on, making people miss and winning with speed. He's becoming a more kind of like you said, he's under control, and he's he's playing the game at his pace. He's not reacting as much. It seems all very planned out. It's all, he's going to get to his spots kind of thing. So Devin Neal is a good player.
He is a good player. And you want to know who else is a good player that we haven't really seen much of this year? How about Ladd McConkey, Georgia's wide receiver, Ladd McConkey. So McConkey,
as if there's any other Ladd McConkeys in the world.
Yeah, not to be confused with the Irish rugby player Ladd McConkey. No. Ladd missed the first few weeks of this season. For the first 4 weeks, the producers are telling me. And he got mixed in here starting in week 5, but they've been kind of getting him a little bit up to speed. And not a player even that had a ton of volume in this offense last year. Brock Bowers was always the featured receiver here. But McConkey was a player that last year kind of jumped off the screen for me at points, and especially watching that postseason run to the second title, you see this player, and specifically you see his speed. It's legit speed. He was operating as a deep threat for them and running some really nice routes as well. So this was a player that I was interested to see, how would this season go for him? And what we saw this week in week 9 was a real breakout career game from Ladd McConkey against Florida, which he had 6 catches on 7 targets for 135 yards and a touchdown. The 135 yards was a career best for McConkey, and I am giving him the survivor badge, because this is the kind of guy that survives the slasher movie, because nobody's catching him. Michael Myers, Ghostface, Jason Voorhees, none of these guys are catching Ladd. This guy's got some real speed.
You didn't want to give him the final girl badge?
I'm not gonna lie, I did think about it, and then I thought, maybe I could go in a different direction.
Yeah, Survivor's good. I think it's fine. It's 2023. We can say he's the final girl.
Hey,
the people know what it means.
Yeah. You want me? I'll change it right now.
No. We don't got to do that. This is the second time he's had 135 yards in his career.
Really?
Yeah. In 2021, he had a game against Auburn, week 6 at Auburn. He had 5 catches for 135 yards and a touchdown, almost an identical game, which is interesting.
See, I saw the career best note from an outside source.
Right.
So I was malinformed, and I am a bad journalist for not confirming my sources. So
that's okay. I mean, it's tied for a career best, so you could say it's a career best. Okay. I don't think that's inappropriate, but okay. I mean, Ladd is also a player that I have has always kind of been around. It feels like, where he's playing every week. He's like Stetson Bennett's number 1 wide receiver. It's just like, he's like, who is this player? Is kind of how I always felt. Is he real? Is he just like a product of this Georgia thing, this machine? And I mean, like you said, he's got real speed. He's a tough player to bring down after the catch. Like, he is a pretty solid run after catch player. He makes a lot of guys miss, and that's due to them having to respect the speed, and also just like, he's very shifty. Like, he's just a really shifty guy. So it'll be interesting what team picks him up like later in the draft, because I don't expect him to be like a high draft pick, but he could absolutely be a real contributor on an NFL team given his skill set. And he's also a lot younger than I expected him to be, because I feel like he's been around for a while, but he's only a junior at Georgia, and he's only 20. He's about to be 22 years old, so he'll be 22 on draft day and like midway through his rookie year. So just a interesting player that feels like he's been around for a long time, but really hasn't. He's just been productive.
Yeah, we've just been watching so much Georgia.
Yeah.
I think we have kind of come to be like, oh, wow, this guy's still around. But it's like, we've just been following along during this like dynasty that they're building.
Exactly.
McConkey's played a big part in that, obviously. And I like what you said about after the catch shiftiness. I mean, this game, 77 yards after the catch, and his touchdown was specifically the play that really made me want to hand him the survivor badge, because he's catching the ball in the middle of the field on an in-breaking route, catches the ball dead stop, and just changes direction the opposite way and beats everybody to the end zone. I mean, we're talking Florida defense here. From 0 to 60 in a blink of an eye, and he was gone into the end zone. I mean, dangerous player with the ball in his hands, I think. And honestly, a player that really sinks his hips well in his breaks. I mean, he's a very technically sound player as well. And I'm not just saying that because he's white. He really is. And I think now that he's on the field and it seems like he's up to 100% here and getting, maximum involvement in this offense, especially now an offense that doesn't include Brock Bowers anymore, maybe we'll get to see some big performances like this out of McConkey the rest of the way, and that could help boost his stock even more.
Couple notes on boosting his stock. Number 1, let's get an accessory. We don't have to go out there with just the gloves on. Number 2, let's get in the teens. Nobody wears 80s anymore unless you're a tight end. So let's get if he was number 11, I feel like, he'd be a little bit more in the conversation. And then we can start talking about Ladd a little. I mean, Ladd McConkey's a tough one too. I mean, just as a name value.
What are you talking about? If I saw Ladd McConkey on the board on Madden, I'd be like, oh yeah, we're going to turn Ladd into an all-pro receiver.
I think that's where you and I differ, because I'm not drafting him. I see Brock Bowers as a tight end. He's absolutely 101 tight end names. Ladd McConkey at receiver, not doing it for me. Maybe a linebacker, but Not doing it for me as a receiver.
Lad McConkey, that's the kind of player that you get 200 yards in the game, then you hop to your local Irish pub and have a few Guinnesses with him. That's what I'm talking about. But all right, let's talk about another wide receiver.
Let's do it. So you're looking at this Washington Huskies offense, and you never really know what's going on here. You know, it's always which guy is going to be the one to pop off. Which one is the thing? So he's getting the thing badge. It's my favorite horror movie of all time. It's that and Alien, if you count it. Alien's like a sci-fi horror, but I count it as horror. Oh, yeah. But it's always a question of who's it gonna be in this Washington offense. It's Odunze, it's McMillan, it's Jalen Polk, and this week he made, just big play after big play. He had 5 catches, 148 yards, 2 touchdowns. His best play in this game was one where he just came off the line on an out and up. He goes up, gets on the DB's toes, breaks out to do the out, and then breaks back up, and the DB's like, oh my God, and just grabs him with both hands. And then Polk discards him and then catches the ball and runs the rest of the way to the house. And it was just this Stanford corner, this poor guy just could not even handle Jalen Polk and his route running in this instance. So, he's having a fantastic season. He is in his 4th year. We talked about him once before, and I think we've given him a badge before.
I don't know that we have. I think we might have smuggled him at one point.
We probably smuggled him in an Odunze or McMillan conversation, but
yeah,
Polk has been very good this year. He's having easily his best season as in his college football career. He was a transfer from Texas Tech after 2020. He played for Texas Tech, came into Washington in 2021, which is looking like a nutty receiver room if you look back on it. It's got Polk, it's got Odunze, it's got McMillan, it's got Puka, it's got some names. The greatest wide receiver of all time, can't not talk about him. 2023, though, is Polk's best season, and this Stanford game was another feather in the cap for Polk.
Yeah, and that, first of all, the touchdown that you're referencing, that play, 92-yard touchdown for Polk. That was a huge play. And yeah, I'm very curious about this player because of, the scenario here where, Jalen McMillan had a great start to the year. First 3 games, didn't miss a beat. And then he's been dealing with some injuries. He's getting himself back on the field a little bit, but he's not involved yet at all. And Jalen Polk has been the player that has filled that gap in this offense. So Odunze continues to be a dominant force, but the number 2 right now is Jalen Polk. And with Michael Penix at the helm, that is equaling a lot of production. 836 yards already this year with 7 touchdowns. I'm curious to see, because he is a 4th-year player, but will he, is this a player that comes out in this draft? What can we expect here? At this point, I don't see why not, because he's putting it all on tape. He's having a career season. First drops of the year came in this game. He had 2 drops, which still, even with the 2 drops, he's still sub 5% on the year. 8 for 10 on contested catches. He stretches the field well. He has those big, plays in the red zone. He is really impressing me this year. And while Odunze is still, like I said, the guy and a player that seemingly just continues to get better week in and week out, Polk is one of the risers, I think, of this class.
So Polk's second touchdown That was not a touchdown. I think.
Remind me what happened.
So it was like a back shoulder fade on the left side of the field, and he caught it with like one hand and trapped it against his chest, and then like the DB had the ball.
Yeah.
and they just called it a touchdown, and it's just boom, that's it. It was a touchdown, and they just moved on. And it was a great catch, if you can call it a catch, but I just that was a pick, I think. But in the box score it says Jalen Polk scored a touchdown, so I mean I'll use it as part of my narrative of Jalen Polk, great catch, one-handed, smothered touchdown. But if I was a ref, I might have called that a pick.
We'll give it to him this week.
I'm glad I'm not a ref, by the way. That was a hard job.
Oh yeah, man. They can't win, and it's okay because they suck sometimes.
It's true. We threw some booze out there.
Oh yeah, the guy,
at the refs.
the head ref, this at Wisconsin, he was hearing it all night, all night. Good call, bad call, doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter. You're getting booed.
Let's talk about another running back. And last week, if you recall, talked about Braylon Allen and sort of, I do this now because we play Dynasty. We're not supposed to do a week-to-week thing, but when you're at camp, you kind of just have to do it. You got to kind of roll with what's going on. And we already talked about TreVeyon Henderson, and we already did our whole thing. Like, oh well, he could be running back one. Like, wait,
who said that?
I did. I'm mimicking myself.
You said that today?
Yeah, I said if TreVeyon keeps it up, there's no reason to believe he couldn't be.
I thought you were saying because of today.
Oh no.
He was going to be the RB1.
I'm just saying that every time a running back has a good game, suddenly we're like, he's the running back one in this class.
Yeah.
And we're just going to keep doing it till the end of the year.
Until there's somebody who establishes himself.
That's what I'm saying. But as long as we're running with this narrative of weekly changes and we keep saying establish yourself and all this, how about we give another badge to Trey Benson, the player that I still had as my running back one when we did a midseason check-in, because I just can't get over the 2022 film. And this week was a little bit of a reminder of what that player can look like when he's at his best. Because in this game, Trey Benson had 10 carries. We're still doing that thing. He's only got 10 carries. 55 yards and a touchdown. Okay, 5.5 per carry, not bad. Got a touchdown out of it. But how about 4 catches on 4 targets for 100 yards and a touchdown? Because something that we really wanted to see from Trey Benson this year was more work in the receiving game. And it really does feel like over the last several weeks, he has almost become their receiving back. Like, they rotate these guys in, and when Benson's in the game, there's a lot of opportunities for him in the pass game. And 4 targets in this game, like I said, one of which, the touchdown, is on a design screen where they get him into open space and they just let him do what he does. And he had blockers in front of him, but when he hit the traffic, when he hit that merge point, there were 3 bodies there. He makes one guy miss, he bounces off another guy, and then bam, he finishes that run with speed. Gets the touchdown, big pass play, big touchdown. Trey Benson, man, it's not high volume these days, but he still flashes with the best of them.
And he looks like a very natural pass catcher, which is a reason to believe that this could be a continued thing. I mean, maybe not over 100 receiving yards every week, but a way for him to contribute in the small doses that Florida State is giving him, because the way he operates in open space just works really well for a guy that can be a good receiver also. And he bounces off people. I mean, the running style is still just as good as it always has been. And when you can get him in space on these screen passes or on these swings or whatever they end up doing with them, that's when he can be at his best, when he can just kind of ping pong off of DBs and then hit the gas and go. That's when he's the Trey Benson that deserves to be in the 101 or the RB1 conversation. So if they're not going to give him more carries, which it doesn't seem like they are, giving him this work in the passing game will kind of even that out and make it feel like if you're in a PPR league or half PPR league, you can feel great about getting a guy like this, knowing that he's a pass catching weapon. And even if you're not, you'll know that he has this ability to catch passes and be a real threat out of the backfield as a pass catcher. And that can just add a whole nother dimension to his game. You can make a living as a 3-down back being a pass catcher just because you can be trusted to work on 3rd down. So I mean, Trey Benson is a great runner, and we've loved him since day one. And if the volume is going to come through the air rather than on the ground, that's fine with me because he looks real good through the air right now.
And I've said this before, but I'm going to keep saying it because it really is confusing to me, because every time he touches the ball, he looks like one of their best players. I don't know why the volume isn't there. I don't know if it's a strategic thing to keep the running backs fresh. They just have guys that they like. They like to rotate them in. I don't know what that is. I am still a believer that Trey Benson, I'm not going to think too hard about the production. I'm not going to think too hard about his stats this year. I think this is a better prospect, a better running back prospect than a college football player. That's where I'm at right now, because if they were giving him 20 carries a game, he'd be up there amongst, some of these top names in college football in terms of production. That's just not happening. So every time I watch him, the touchdown run that he had in this game, classic. I mean, looks so spry, so explosive, so quick. I mean, it was just an 18-yard carry in the red zone, just made it look so easy. And that's something that I think it just hasn't gone away. And that the elusiveness, it doesn't look the same this year, but I don't think that means that he's suddenly not a good player anymore.
Yeah, I agree. I think the eye test kind of overtakes the numbers in this case, especially since they're a good team and they obviously have a certain kind of scheme. There's always those kind of players that are in a committee in the NFL when you're watching and you're like, why can this guy not just get the ball every play? And it seems like that kind of thing is happening with Benson.
Let's talk about a running back who is ultra productive this season.
Let's talk about somebody that you have brought up more than once on the program and has gotten badges before on the program, and that is Marshawn Lloyd, a running back for USC. He had a nice game against Cal in the barn burner. I mean, 50-49. Not a lick of defense was played in this game, and Marshawn Lloyd took advantage of that. I mean, 113 yards on the ground on 17 carries and 2 touchdowns. He's getting the slasher badge because he was just, once he finds that hole, he is just slashing through the defense. I mean, the speed that he has, the acceleration that he has, the one cut and go kind of ability that he has is really nice. And it's a nice alternative on this offense to, hey, Caleb, please make a play for us. And It's just nice to be able to give the ball to Zero and know that you're in good hands, because he's averaging 7.8 yards per carry. And that does have to do with the threat of 13 in the backfield. I mean, and a lot of this offense is There's some pretty RPO heavy stuff that helps him too, but he is making good work out of it. And when he's getting over 10 carries, he is producing in high numbers. And in this game, he had 17, which was a season high. And he produced not quite a season high in rushing yards, but his second most rushing yards in a game. So Marshawn Lloyd is another one of these interesting prospects that we have been keeping an eye on. And the best thing about this game is not the 113 yards on the ground. It was the 72 yards through the air. Because, I mean, when you can come out of the backfield and be another threat on top of all these guys that Caleb Williams has to throw to, it doesn't hurt to have a little safety valve that can go for 3 catches and 72 yards. So another guy that is really nice after the catch and can make some things happen. So we're keeping an eye on all these running backs, Austin. It is a process that has not been the kindest, where we're like, who is even going to be in our top 5 at the end of the season? And Marshawn Lloyd is making his case with a game like this.
I mean, he sure is. I continue to be just blown away every time I watch Marshawn Lloyd. I mean, he has a 56-yard rush in this game, and yet I think one of the more exciting or notable plays was like an 8-yard run that he had in this game, because he's just the sort of player where he gets those 8 yards so quickly. Like, it looks like there's nothing really there, but when he shoots that gap and just kind of falls forward, that's why his yards per carry is so high. He is constantly just getting chunk yards in the blink of an eye. If there's a hole for him to run, he's getting 5 yards every time because his burst is so extreme. And then you see what he does on the second level. And with both power and elusiveness, he has the ability to make a guy miss one cut. There was a play in this game where a guy gets into the backfield and he just like dead legs them. They go flying past them and he picks up yardage. And then you get him out in space and he's taking people on, stiff arms, trucking people. I mean, he has a lot of tools. If you talk about running backs, how do you win? How do you create yards? Marshawn Lloyd creates yards in a lot of different ways. And that's why he has been one of my, one of the more exciting players for me to watch this year, is just seeing kind of how he wins and all of the different things that he does. And then, like you said, getting mixed in the pass game, a lot of which came on just improvisation. I mean, it was like Caleb would scramble and Marshawn Lloyd would kind of, he's running his little flat route. And then, as the play's breaking down, he kind of makes a savvy move to get himself into space. Caleb finds him and bam, we get, chunk yardage on a pass play as well. So really nice game. The only thing here that I want to bring up, and yep, I'm going to do this. When we initially talked about him, one of the things was that over his first 2 years in college football, he had a little bit of a ball security problem. And at that point in time, he had not fumbled. Now we have back-to-back weeks with a fumble. And the last thing I'll say, because I'm going to turn this portion of it over to you, we had some really, really tough pass block reps in this game. There were multiple instances where I was like, oh man, if Collin saw that, I don't know if this player's ever reaching his top 5. Like it was that bad. So that's 2 areas for him to certainly clean up a little bit.
Yeah. So this is where we'll get into the negatives. Is it's hard to see the field if you're making those kind of mistakes. That's the be all end all. NFL coaches, above all else, want you to hit the hole, get at least 4 yards, and move on to the next play. And as much juice as you have, and tools is a great word to use because, I mean, it's been a while since we've talked about guys with tools. It's usually saved for the off season when we're digging into the film, but Marshawn Lloyd has the tools to be a very good running back, but the polish is where it looks a little iffy. And I mean, it's the pass blocking is concerning, I'll say, because
one thing I want to say just real quick before we get too deep into this discussion is that I don't know that it's been this bad all year, because I've definitely seen some pretty good reps out of him in pass protection. So I don't know what happened in this game, but it was bad.
Yeah, I also don't know what was going on here. But like I said, the pass blocking was bad, where he was just like whiffing assignments. It's like, what are we doing? How are we just? And then you leave your quarterback out to dry because you're the last line of defense. You got to pick up that blitz. You got to pick up that free rusher. I mean, you are the guy. And maybe it's because, you get a little antsy to chip and release when you have 72 yards to the air. Maybe you just want to get out into the flat a little quicker so you can get the dump off. But just, stay home, eat that block. That's unfortunately the job of the running back. You gotta take that linebacker that's coming in full speed. You just gotta eat that for your quarterback. So if you're not going to be a willing blocker, and if you're going to lose the ball, it'll be tough to see the field in the NFL. But I think he's got all the tools to be a solid running back, and those things are, I mean, blocking's easily coachable. Like, that's something you can very well improve on. There's a little bit of want to, a little bit of grit, a little bit of desire that goes into that. But I mean, that also is something that, hey, you can make $15 million if you just, hit that linebacker that's coming in there. I think can instill a little bit of grit in you.
That's worth it, I would say. Let's talk about a game that we already talked about with our last badge of the week, but on the other side, because we're bringing another IDP into Camp Dynasty this week for a badge. I got Braylon Trice from Washington, edge rusher. We talked about Jalen Polk on the offensive side of things. Braylon Trice had one of the craziest games from a rusher of the entire season thus far. I mean, the number that really jumped out at me, 16 total pressures for Braylon Trice in this game. He is getting the quarterback's worst nightmare badge from me, because it seems like he's back there every play. 16 pressures, by the way, is the most by a single player in a game this season. And in fact, it is the most in a single game by a player since Braylon Trice had 18 in week 13 of last season against Washington State. So there's been some conversations this year about the lack of sacks that Trice has had in a really deep and strong edge class. Trice had only had one sack thus far coming into this week, but he was having a fine year in terms of pressuring the quarterback. You see it all come together this week with the 16 pressures, 2 sacks in this one as well, 12 hurries. I mean, just like making life living hell, and had some really nice run defense plays as well. So really complete all around game from Trice, and a player that really caught my eye this week as an IDP.
Just an absolute game wrecker type of game for Braylon Trice. He was an absolute animal on some of these passers, on just some of the pressures where, I mean, they had like that action that I talk about so often with Georgia, where they bring that tight end across to block the free rusher, and Braylon Trice is the rusher, and the tight end, he's just like, hey, just so you know, I'm gonna get to the quarterback. You can come along with me if you want, but either I'm getting there or we're getting there. And I mean, he doesn't end up getting the sack on that play, but he gets a hand on him and like pulls him down, and that's one of the pressures, and it's a QB hit. And this is just like video game kind of numbers from Braylon Trice. And you also mentioned that this is a deep and it's a very interesting edge class, and it's true. There were a ton of guys that had really good weeks this week, and Braylon Trice still managed to stand out in this way with these performances this week. And I mean, the power that he has, it just feels like he is moving tackles with ease with his lower body. He just gets into them, and this bull rush is just like completely destroying the timing of plays. So I mean, Braylon Trice is not only a game-wrecking player, but also a very technically sound player where he can hold that edge and just like eliminate the edge. Where on a run play, he also just took the right tackle and put him where originally the center was on the play. And the running back's just like, okay, what's happening? And then he's got to try to figure it out. And Braylon doesn't get credit for that as like a TFL or anything, but then his teammate gets to come and clean up the mess that he made. So good player.
Yeah. And like you said, talk about this edge class, diverse. There's a lot of like smaller rushers, I think, in this one as well. Like, I mean, think about guys like Dallas Turner or Chop Robinson, guys who are going to hover around 250, maybe even a little bit less than that. And then you have this player, Braylon Trice, on the opposite end, where he's coming in at 6'4", 274. So, he's a bigger player with some get off, and he's coming out of a 2-point stance in a lot of cases in this game and winning easily with his power, with his speed to power. And yeah, one thing that really stood out to me with Trice also, motor. Mm-hmm. I love these defensive, like edge players and defensive linemen. When you have high motor, I love that. And this is the kind of player that works on every single snap. No matter if the play is away from him, no matter if the play is at him, no matter if he's pass rushing, no matter if he's in coverage, no matter if he's run defending, every single play he is going at 100%, and you can see it. There was a play where he's dropping into zone coverage. He dropped so quickly to his spot that he ran into the wide receiver, and it looked like he was like Shaq, like boxing somebody out. Like maybe it was even a penalty. I don't know. But like it was just like crazy how intensely he got to his spot in the zone. That's the kind of player that this is, and that's a player that I like a lot.
I was going to mention the motor because he got double teamed a few times.
Yes,
and
a lot of times.
Sometimes you see these players, they'll just like, push the guys out and just kind of wait and see what happens. And Braylon Trice is like working his ass off to split that double team every single time, and it pays off more often than not. So the motor is definitely a huge thing. And when it comes to an IDP asset, chasing down and getting a couple solo tackles is so valuable for an edge player that you get that sack, and that's your like splash play. And then you also add on like 5 or 6 tackles. It just makes for a floor that is sustainable as like a startable DL asset, plus splash plays that he is making. I mean, frequently enough where you can have like a star kind of DL asset here. And the speed at 275 is crazy. Like the get off and the speed where these guys look like they're stuck in the mud, and he's just like chopping the arms and running like his hair's on fire, and he's getting after this quarterback. I mean, I would not want to, stand behind the center and see number 8 lined up against me.
Really nice week for edge players. We went with Trice here, but Jared Verse had a big game. Leatu Latu had another big game. It was a good week for edge players, and it's looking like every week it's kind of confirming this is going to be a really good edge class, I think.
Who was it not a really good week for?
That's kind of what I was thinking this week.
Well, do you want to get into it? Do you want to?
Oh my God. That was an incredible segue. That was so natural that I completely missed it. I am sorry.
It's okay.
But yes.
I tried to alley the oop. You didn't even jump for it.
Yeah. It was like
it's just a turnover.
Yeah.
They're going the other way.
Bench. I got my 4 minutes for the night and I'm already out. I'm done. All right. Great job by you. Terrible job by me. Let's go ahead and make the call home. And we talked about running backs this week. And I've already mentioned the name Braylon Allen as a player that we discussed last week. God, I came on here and said, you know what? By God, I think he might just be the RB1 in this class. And now, this week, we had badges for Travion Henderson. We had badges for Trey Benson. We had badges for Marshawn Lloyd. But we're making a call home for Braylon Allen this week. And why is that, Colin?
So Braylon, we were going to Madison to see the RB1 face off against the wide receiver 1. And in the first half, Braylon Allen had 2 fumbles in back-to-back drives. He had one that he lost, and then the next drive, he fumbled, got it back, and it was like, man, this is not a good game for Braylon Allen in a game where they absolutely need him against Ohio State, who, they had a chance to make this game not only interesting, but they had a chance to take this game in the first half. The defense was holding up. Ohio State was not getting much going, and they needed their best player to play like their best player. And Braylon Allen gave the ball up twice. Like I said, got the one back, but turned it over once. And then he goes down on a play where he was stood up at the goal line twice and then got injured on the second one, if I'm remembering correctly, and left that game. And so we come to the phone to call home about number 1, some a little bit of fumble concern. This is another year with 4 fumbles. In 2021, he had 4 fumbles. Now 2023, he has 4 already, and it's only week 9. And then a little bit of concern for the health because he has not been the healthiest player. And once again, he is down for this Wisconsin team. And at only 19 years old, this is a player that you would expect to be, the picture of health. This is somebody that should be very, springy. It should heal fast, that should recover quickly. This is a kid. You can't even drink alcohol yet. This is for most people, 1 year out of high school, 19 years old. So it's a little concerning that we are already seeing some injuries mount up, and he left this game walking gingerly, ended up in a boot. We don't have an update yet. We might not get an update because that's how college football is. But as of now, we're calling home.
Yeah, the injury is, I mean, it's a bummer because it sounds like he will not be playing this upcoming week, which then opens the door to how serious is this injury? When will he be back? So that's obviously a part of this, and that's the sucky part of this. But the part that is really kind of concerning is what is happening with ball security in the last 4 weeks. I mean, he had 2 fumbles already this year, both of which came in the last 4 games. Week 6 and week 7, he fumbled in each of those games. And then this week, I mean, it was the first drive, I believe, right? The first drive.
I believe so.
Fumbles, ball to Ohio State, and then fumbles again. They did recover the second fumble, but so like you said, we already have a season where he did fumble 4 times. Last year was pretty clean, only the 1 fumble, but now we're opening a door here where is this a problem for this player? Is this a real weakness of his game? And a player that is already sort of in this weird territory. I know we're already like saying, oh, well, he's the RB1 and all that. I think, yeah, we just really do need to pump the brakes here, get to the end of this season, look at the full body of work for every player, because they're all going to have these sorts of parts of their game. Every single one of these running backs has something where you can sit there and say, I don't know, that's a little concerning. That might just be fumbles for Braylon Allen right now.
Yeah, it was back-to-back drives. It was Wisconsin's first drive, had a 4-yard run, and then he fumbled on his second run. And then Ohio State got a field goal, and then they got the ball back, and the first play of the next drive, when they got the ball back, he fumbled again and recovered his own fumble. So it's just, I mean, it's all there with Braylon. And that's why it's frustrating to see the little things that you hate to see in a running back. I mean, the thing I was so impressed with in the Illinois game is like he's doing all the little things right. You know, he's pass blocking well, he's running well between the tackles, he's getting extra effort plays, he's breaking tackles, he's breaking off runs, he's catching some passes. And then you come to the start of this game and he played a full half and it didn't look good the whole half. And it's like there's inefficiencies here and you're just putting your head down and falling forward, and then you lose the ball and you got a little bit of butterfingers. And this is playing a much better defense than anybody you've played so far. And maybe that's the answer to this question of like, what's going on with Braylon Allen in this game? Why was he this much worse? And maybe that's the answer, but hopefully he'll heal up nicely with his 19-year-old bones and be back in, week 11, and we can finish up this season on a high note.
Let's finish this episode on a high note. Boom, segue. It's time.
That's what I'm talking about.
To light the fire and recollect on the campers of old, on all grown up. You know what? I want you to start this week. Who do you want to talk about?
I think there's one guy we have to talk about, and it's Jordan Addison.
Me too.
Yeah. I mean, he has been fantastic since Justin Jefferson went down with the hamstring injury. He has absolutely taken the wide receiver 1 spot and has looked the part. We talked about him being a really nice complement to Justin Jefferson in this offense preseason, and he was, but I never really, entertained the idea of Addison being the wide receiver 1 on this team because we never really pictured the team without Justin Jefferson here. But without Justin Jefferson here, I mean, he looks incredible, and he has climbed up to the wide receiver 12 overall since this has taken place. I mean, since October 22nd, he has had a steady climb. I mean, what do we think about? I know you're a big Jordan Addison guy. I mean, this is
I love
pretty
when
sick.
he makes you speechless like that.
I
love
mean,
that.
good Lord, he's just been so good.
Yeah, so there's multiple ways we can take this conversation. The first way that I want to take it is
I don't want to talk about Kirk Cousins.
Okay, I wasn't going to go
Okay.
there, but that is a thing. The other thing though is that I think it was a little bit glossed over. Maybe it wasn't, but like there was a point in the summer or the spring or sometime post draft where I talked about, we're talking a lot about Tank Dell's size, but we're not talking about Jordan Addison's size nearly enough. It doesn't matter. I mean, I think the thing here to learn is that no matter if he's 165, 170, whatever he is right now, he wins against NFL corners all the time. You watch him in these games. The big narrative with him was press coverage. And I mean, there were reasons to be concerned about press coverage with some of the tape that he put out in 2022. That was one of the things that we talked about with Jordan Addison. Can he consistently handle press coverage? And then it was like, well, he's lining up across from Justin Jefferson. He's not going to be getting pressed all that often. Him operating in the number one role right now, you watch his reps against press, and the release is just chef's kiss, man. He is so technically sound. He's so gifted as a route runner, and even as a smaller player, it doesn't matter because guys can't get their hands on him. And so that's been something that's really stood out to me, is like his size isn't affecting him. One of the, primary weaknesses potentially of his game isn't even really showing up in the ways that we thought it might. And then you start to think about what really is the ceiling for a player like this. What can this player be? And like you said, he's already climbing up these boards, wide receiver 12 in Dynasty asset 23 right now. We're going to get to a conversation here, and this is the second avenue I wanted to go to, and I'm going to turn it over to you. We're going to have a conversation here about something that I said a few weeks ago. The JSN versus Addison debate. Where are we 2 weeks later after seeing what Addison has done as the wide receiver one in this offense?
It's a very fair question because JSN has been he hasn't been bad. I'll say that. And Addison has been very good in the last few weeks. So that's been the big difference, is JSN has been solid, and the things that he's done are the things we've expected him to do. But Addison has done what we expected him to do, plus a lot more. And the roles are so different that it's hard to be like, well, Addison is worth more, and if you can, you should trade JSN for Addison today. But the thing is, Addison has a real role in a good offense across from the best wide receiver in football. And JSN is a little bit buried behind, DK Metcalf, Lockett, in an offense that wants to run the ball a lot. With Seattle, I mean, Pete Carroll loves establishing the run. So unless you see Tyler Lockett leave town, which is possible, I mean, it's not like that's unheard of, but they have no reason to get rid of Tyler Lockett. Like, having 3 good wide receivers isn't bad, But the Jake Bobo thing, I mean, this is all working
real, man.
against JSN, and Addison has none of that in front of him, except for now he lost Kirk Cousins, and that's a question mark for the rest of this season, at least. So in Dynasty, this is why this game is so hard, man. Because would I trade, if I had JSN, would I send the trade for Jordan Addison straight up? I'd be a little hesitant, but I think I'd do it. And if I had Jordan Addison and somebody sent me JSN straight up, I don't think I'd take it. So that's where I'm at right now.
Yeah, it's a very tough scenario. It's a tough question because it's not a realistic scenario. Like, we don't need to like pit these players against each other 8 weeks into their NFL careers, but just what you're saying, I think, is kind of where we're headed, and folks were headed there already. And I did the whole thing where it's like, I'm going to trade Addison for JSN 100 times out of 100. That wasn't that long ago that I said that. Sometimes you just kind of have to put your pride to the side, and that's not me saying that I think, suddenly Addison is a better prospect or player than JSN can be. And this was always the case. It was always going to be this way. Production versus patience. That was always going to be the thing here. It just so happens that Addison, I think, looks better than I expected already.
Yeah. Yep.
And so now you have to start thinking, what is JSN's ceiling versus the player that we're already seeing with Jordan Addison. And that's why the conversation becomes so difficult and challenging, especially when we're not that far away from thinking of these players simply as what they were as prospects. But 0 drops also for Addison. That was one of the concerns with him as well. Something that I brought up before the season last year. 0 drops so far this year, 5 for 10 on contested catches even. I mean, he's making tough catches against, players, taking big hits, and everything just looks so clean for him right now.
It was funny last game where he had the 2 contested catch opportunities, and it was literally like a coin flip because they were the exact same play, and one ended up being a pick and one ended up being a touchdown, and it was like the literal 2 polar results happening in the same game, in the same situation, the same like route, same defensive coverage. It was just kind of weird to see that play out how it did, and Addison, turning it into the positive on one end and the negative on the other.
I want to talk about a player that's playing right now.
Me too.
Jahmyr Gibbs.
Yep.
Here's that whole thing about patience again, because David Montgomery gets hurt, and immediately we see what Jahmyr Gibbs can be as a featured back in the NFL. He has a huge game last week. We talked about it a little bit. Right now, he's having another huge game, and the stats are still going up as we're speaking. So, Jahmyr Gibbs, where are we at?
Man, this is what we've been looking for. He looks like he is, playing in fast forward right now. He had the run that he scored a touchdown on. It was a run up the middle, which, whoa, he can do that?
Thought he couldn't do that.
Yeah, and he just, snaked his way through traffic, found the outside, got daylight, and burst into the end zone in the ugliest jerseys you could put together. Good Lord, the Lions, you debut this new helmet with the all gray. What are we doing? But Gibbs looks good in them. I tell you what, if there's anybody that can make him look good, it's 26. And so, he's been rookie RB2 and he should be, because
he's not, though.
Well,
if we this is what I
you're
want.
right.
This is what I want to talk about.
Okay. Let's talk about. I didn't check the KTC. I should have. Is he not the rookie RB2?
Achane.
Oh, that's right. I
So,
forgot about that thing.
and that's what bothers me is like, and I get it. I understand why it's not like, we're all humans. We see, this Dolphins offense and what Achane was doing in that offense when he was healthy. But I think we still have to think about the fact that Jahmyr Gibbs was a level of talent that exceeded what Achane was. All we needed was this, which was the workload to increase. And that was always going to happen. The narrative about, oh, we drafted him, but he's a change of pace guy. Whatever quote got pulled out of that press conference that day, it sent the whole world into a frenzy. And it was like, I mean, guys, come on. They spent 12 on him. This is going to happen eventually. And now we see it happening. And he's RB8 in Dynasty and rookie running back RB3. That's not going to last because he was Dynasty RB2 not that long ago, if I'm not mistaken. He'll be right back up there after this week for sure.
Yeah, Dan Campbell's the one that said that he would be a change of pace back. And it's like, okay, but he obviously has all the juice in the world. And you just don't have another player like that on this team. So especially after, once you go to this spot with Jahmyr Gibbs as the Lions staff, you see what he's doing for your offense and it's instant gas into your offense, feeding the flames. There's no way that you are just going to be like, you know what, but I do really like what David Montgomery does for us. I really like the 4 yards. That's great. So Gibbs, in my opinion, should be the Dynasty RB5 right now. It should be Bijan, McCaffrey, Bouressa, Etienne, and then Gibbs. That feels appropriate.
Just put it to bed. You know, just stop touching it. This is what it should be.
Yeah. So, we might get to the end of the year and David Montgomery might get more carries again. That's fine. Let's just relax. You see what this player can be. The Lions see what this player can be. They'll realize they hit. And if nothing else, next season will look a little different than this season.
For now, let's enjoy it.
Let's enjoy it.
Fun player.
Yeah. Let's go watch the fourth quarter.
You want to do it?
Yeah.
Let's do it. All right. That is week 8 in the NFL and week 9 of college football. We are rapidly approaching the end of the college football season. I think the discussions every week are starting to become even more and more big picture oriented as we see the end of the tunnel. And we start to think about the fact that in only a few weeks' time, we're going to have to start thinking about this class in a holistic way once again for several months as we lead up to the NFL draft. So we're going to keep going on that journey. We're going to keep talking about the 2023 campers along the way as well. If you enjoyed this week's episode, follow us at camp_dynasty on X and TikTok at camp.dynasty. Check out the YouTube channel as well, where video feeds of the pods go up every single week. Channel is Camp Dynasty. And of course, like, rate, subscribe, review, share, follow, all of those things to the podcast, which is still the bread and butter here at Camp Dynasty.
I love me some bread and butter, man. It's almost Thanksgiving. We're getting through Halloween. We're going to get to Thanksgiving. Get some Hawaiian rolls, warm them up, get some butter on them. Man.
I'm going to go get some bread right now. Turn on the game. So
there was some bread and some butter. Yeah. Throw the podcast in the ears. Happy Halloween, folks.
Happy Halloween indeed. Thanks for stopping by Camp Dynasty this week, and we'll see you next week.